joining from the Hindu, Aroon.
Hi everyone, I'm Aroon. I cover tech policy for the Hindu out of the National Bureau here in Delhi. So this session is going to be about content moderation, especially as we are heading up to the elections. And we did touch upon a little bit of content moderation issues in the first panel, but here we will talk a little bit about what the condition of the terrain is in terms of what environment the social media platforms as well as the political ecosystem is kind of dealing with compared to, let's say, a market like Europe or the US, right? So for this session, we have Kazim Rizvi. Kazim is the founder of the Dialogue, which is one of the few tech policy think tanks that we have here in Delhi. We have Berges, Malu. Berges heads the policy and communications for ShareChat, which is an Indic exclusive social media platform. He's been there for 6 years. And we have Amitabh Kumar, who founded Social Media Matters around a decade ago, and it does a lot of work in trust and safety for social media platforms, and has worked extensively with the likes of Meta, Google, Twitter, back when it was still called that. So we will start with the situation as it is right now, right? So Amitabh, can you talk a little bit about? First of all, thank you so much for joining us today on such short notice.
It's all Kazim, by the way.
Yeah,
he calls, you join.
So, can you talk to us a little bit about the situation as it stands in India in terms of what makes, we hear, oh, it's so many people, diverse cultures, but when we compare it to a market where we heard in the last session that the problems have already been addressed to some extent. We have racism detecting algorithms. We have a huge amount of resources invested into things like disinformation. So can you tell us a little bit about where we are right now in terms of social media market, especially in a year like this when we have far more smartphone penetration than ever before?
I mean, I think when it comes to the social media market, India is where everybody comes for growth, right? So once you've established yourself in any other market, good examples are of new companies which are going to enter India. Blue Sky Social, Yubo for France. Blue Sky Social is Jack Dorsey's new pet project. Now they're planning to come to India is for growth. So we have 2 billion people, many are still coming online. So we are a very, very big market when it comes to user data, user patterns, all of that stuff. But I think this is focused more on content moderation. So content moderation, I'll go a step back and say globally. And for everybody in the room, there's an amazing speech by Dave Wilner, which happened last week. Berkman Klein Institute at Stanford. Please watch it. He's the gentleman who used to lead Meta. And he says it very clearly that we are very, very bad at the core aspect of content moderation. We just are dealing with an industrial problem in a very artisanal way. So that's just a very good way of putting it. Multiple data points. And as you questioned, I'll definitely look into it. But specifically Indian socio-cultural economical context, 789 districts, all of them extremely different from each other. We know about a few cities a little bit maybe when it comes to content moderation. The people doing content moderation come from a certain demographic. The people writing terms and conditions, terms of service and community guidelines come from a certain demographic, and there's a huge gap. And this comes from a practitioner's perspective, so please take this as the professor before me said, this is all my opinion, though I do have a lot of data to back it up and links to share on it.
Absolutely. And Burgess, could you add a little bit more about the kind of social media profile that we have outside of rooms like this, right? ShareChat has been for a long time purely Indic, and so we see continues to be purely Indic, and so we see that it's likely to be a more representative slice of view of society as it is online, right? So can you tell us about what that looks like?
Our user base. So we operate in 15 Indian languages. We have 2 apps today, ShareChat and Modge. One is a pure short video platform, one is a content sharing platform. Across the 2, we have over 300 million users each month. And most of our users who used to be tier 2 and tier 3, we also now have users coming from tier 1 audiences. And I think Amitabh is right. Our terms of service, or even this idea of privacy, for instance, is a concept that people in this room are concerned about. There is no word for privacy in Hindi. what are you even talking about when you talk about privacy, right? You talk about other issues that people like us are discussing, whether it's misinformation or there was this nice interview I was watching of Parpada over the weekend with Sanjay Javed. She says people outside the cities don't care about your institutions, about all these other topics that people like us are discussing. For them, there are other issues that they're more concerned about. So when you talk about moderation of content on the platform, many of these users are first-time internet users. We made the same mistakes in 2000, 2005 when we came on. Today, we are more careful of what we share online because we know it will get screenshotted. We know our reputation can get eroded on Twitter, etc. Right? But a lot of these folks are actually first-time internet users on any of these platforms, whether it's ShareChat or Google or Facebook or whatever. And so then they don't realize the repercussions of what they're saying or what they're doing. And that may not require laws or anything else, but just better education in schools about what social media and what the internet is.
Now, that's a very interesting point you're making about how this market kind of has a different set of values to which it is fundamentally approaching something like social media, right? So how does that play out on a day-to-day basis when you have this big of a user base, whether it is ShareChat or whether it is something like Facebook or Instagram? How do these daily battles play out in the world of moderation?
I mean, it's a lot more complex than being a daily battle because even when you come out with AI mechanisms to tune out certain words, people find new words to use. Earlier it was, for instance, this term that is used for fact checkers on Twitter, where you put a heart emoji and you put DE in front of every fact checker's name. Right? Now, how can you deal with that? You start blocking the heart emoji itself. It's not something AI can figure out, right? And people have realized that moderation mechanisms can be fooled in many, many ways. And if we start censoring too much, then the same people in this room will have another discussion on too much censorship. Right? So it's a fine line. Either is it we want to have that kind of censorship, like someone in the earlier panel said, oh, we should, other countries are doing it. We don't know what's happening in a social messaging app. We should have tools to figure that out. Okay, go for it. And then the next thing you'll have is another 6 discussions on is the government sitting and reading all my chats. Fake news is not an issue that started yesterday or the last 5 years. It's something that we have had even back in the day. People have fallen for Nigerian scams even in 1999. People are falling for scams even today. In 1999, no one was going after Yahoo saying they're not moderating emails better. Or in 2024, we go after the platform saying you're not moderating a platform to be scammed. It's been an issue forever.
Yeah, and the way the state has looked at social media, even just the internet in particular, because social media is a fairly recent manifestation of that. Kazim, can you talk to us a little bit about the IT rules and everything before that? Actually, let's start from 2000, right? This is when we had our IT Act and we had government and parliament kind of looking at content online, thinking about, okay, what is legal, what is not. And how do we pin responsibility on these things? And can you tell us a little bit about how we got here today?
So if you see, the IT Act 2000, and then you had the implemented liability amendments which came in, and then 2015 you had the share signage. I think it was very clear in terms of what is intermediate liability and how do you take down content. Right, a platform has to have actual knowledge and of the legality of content and it is taken. So that was a sort of safe harbor principle which had been established in India, and for all the right reasons, because that allows people to express their opinions. Right, you don't want to place a liability on platforms because at the end of the day they start censoring you and they will say, okay, fine, we also have to run a business. So it's not straightforward to say, okay, fine, let's start putting more and more obligation. From 2015 onwards, we've seen gradually that additional due diligence norms have continued to erode the whole idea of safe harbor. Right? Where we are in 2024, There are around 11 or 12 additional due diligence norms in 3.1b. Some of them are not even content related additional due diligence norms, right? So I mean, compliance officer. If you don't have one, safe harbor is taken away. So in general, I think where we are moving towards is greater onus and greater emphasis on governments mandating platforms to take down content, preempt the legality of content, and start removing it before it comes to the notice. Even the definition of actual knowledge has changed from a government or a court order to theoretically now we're talking about anyone who can file a complaint. That puts the platforms in a precarious situation. We have to run a business, we also have to comply with the rules. And the window to operate is very thin. Number two is that you will also end up putting liability and telling platforms to decide what is true and what is not. I don't think we want to be in a situation where a platform is deciding, okay, what is truth, what is legal or what is not legal for the masses, for the society. That's not platform's job, right? I mean, they should not be arbiter of truth. So that's another challenge which we are sort of going towards, or sort of in the next 5-10 years, it will end up there. Of course, AI related AI mechanisms, AI technology, which is being used to filter takedowns, there in the rules as well. But we need maybe a greater collaboration or a co-regulation model with respect to platforms in the government and society industry coming together and saying, okay, this is how we will regulate it. A heavy-handed approach with regulations and with clear penalties and with impunity if you treat people platforms with that, I think it's going to lead to a precarious situation, which is where we are already heading to. So what we need to do is maybe open it up a little bit for different interpretations and apply a model which is based on content being generated regularly and then you take it down, rather than preempting and censorship and all those things will come in eventually. So from 2015 to now, if you look at how ShareChat was and what it said, it's changed quite dramatically to where we are in terms of 2024 and the way content takedown mechanisms are taking place. And yeah, let's see how the future goes. But at this stage, we need the Digital India Act is being talked about, that whether safe harbor will be there or not, right? I mean, you look at the DSA, it very categorically maintains that, look, while platforms need to have greater action due to this obligation, you can't take away safe harbor from it. And we need to retain that by all means in the new law. Of course, there will be different classifications, and DSA has done classification based on just hosting service providers or content providers. But in India, we'll have to sort of maintain the idea of safe harbor if we are to sort of continuously have an internet which allows UGC content to be published.
And you have mentioned safe harbor quite a bit in the sense that we are seeing how the expectation has shifted so dramatically and so almost totally on to the platforms, right? In terms of you have these specific frameworks in place to comply with these expectations and these grievances that come your way. Now, do you think that's a healthy thing? Do you think that's a healthy trend of shifting more and more of suability, so to speak, to the platforms?
No, it's not. And I think it's because of lack of trust, and the government doesn't trust platforms, right? It's very clear. And I think that's why it comes from the fact that, okay, we will have regulation. If you don't do something, your safe harbor is gone immediately. And that threat looms over you as a platform. You're always worried, okay, I got to overcompensate for this, which happens. So a lot of, and this is a conversation which we also keep having, is legal versus harmful content, right? So content may be harmful, but if it's legal, I think it should be allowed, right? So a lot of the conversation we had in the previous panel that, okay, this is problematic, that's problematic. I think we cannot over-regulate the internet with takedowns, issuing takedowns of, my interpretation is different from yours, and I don't like what you're posting. It may be harmful, but it's not illegal. You cannot say, okay, take down content, even on falsehood. You cannot ask a platform constitutionally to take down content. It's not illegal. It may be false, but it's not illegal. So I think we'll have to be very careful in terms of what are the different labels of content we are allowing and what we are not allowing. And go back to the sort of the provision that, okay, if you have actual knowledge, there is an order, you have to take it down under certain rules, and then you go ahead and take it down. But to create an environment that, okay, you're forcing platforms to over-regulate, over-censor. I think it'll create, which we are already seeing, it'll create a big lack of trust even between the communities and the platform, which is the case right now, unfortunately.
Amitabh, I'm going to ask you a little bit about elections, in the sense that India has several elections in a given 5-year period. It's not just the Lok Sabha elections. And in the last 10 years, we have seen a huge wave of digitization post-Geo. So in those years where elections are happening, in your work with social media platforms, what exactly have you noticed happens in the months preceding the polling? And what kind of challenges kind of preoccupy them the most in terms of, okay, this is an urgent thing we don't have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and now suddenly this is our entire evening.
Yeah, I mean, I think since 2014, if we start looking into misinformation, became really solid in 19, and now national elections are definitely in focus. State elections, depending on the size of states, is sometimes in focus. Sometimes they don't even know that's like. That's pretty much the truth. And of course, the importance of misinformation has increased because of conversation around it. Government announcing various guidelines, putting it in a department, coalitions coming on, fact checkers working on it. All this conversation brings misinformation a little bit out of the total darkness. But from the platform perspective, now let's look at this. This is a simple business. It's a tech. Right now, when it comes to tech, if you have a good definition, if you have a good system, we are in a place to sort things out very well. I also wear a hat of a startup, Confidence.ai, where we are developing technology for trusted safety folks. In fact, this morning I did 2 presentations on deepfake detection. What Kazim said is very important. This is the first part, the definition, right? Unless you get it down to the black and white part, the illegal part. So where it is a little easier to do is, let's say, caste-based abuse, where Supreme Court has given you clear guidance. Misinformation, if the law is not clear, if humans can't get it and agree on it, machine will definitely not get it and agree on it. That's one part. Second part is the system. What is the system? FIR, 90-day, XYZ, like what the DSA is kind of putting a playbook, I think it's the first good attempt is, there's a clear step-by-step definition. So platforms do put very, very good people to do research and they consult with the best. The problems with the platform is the person doing the content moderation. So when they say that I have 100,000 people, 99,000 are in a BPO. They are getting paid 24,000 rupees a month and they are leaving the job within 9 months. That is the problem. So think about it like the Delhi police. Commissioner, awesome. IS, awesome. Constable, the guy who's actually doing the job. So 3 very big problems. Definition, which cannot create a clear system, and the guy who's doing the job is not motivated to do the job. Right? So while the intent is good, the process of implementation is for, they're just like lots of holes in the Titanic and we just kind of try to swerve it in some way, but it's not really impactful.
I mean, it's kind of interesting how you mentioned that, oh, they are not even aware that sometimes a state election is going on, but when a national election is going on, the whole trust and safety team flies in. And
we have a great playbook. We have a great playbook for what happened in the Northeast a couple of months back. Let's start looking into when did the reaction start, right? And then when did the action start? So I'm just talking about data points. And currently, this year, 15 countries have already seen elections, right? Pakistan, Indonesia, here, there, everywhere. Only country which has done a little good at elections and misinformation handling is Finland. Because in 2014, they started a mass media literacy program. So what Berges was saying, right? That while, of course, we are talking about content moderation and systems and definitions, the only solutions out there in the world and the one which is working on data points is something which is about literacy. So when will the election come? Like, do we know that election happens every month? Not just state election, there is also panchayat election, there's local election. So India loves elections. But how many times is a team created to actually look into misinformation? Even after this election, post 16th of August, when government will be in full flow, whatever is happening in September, do you think there'll be equal attention given to misinformation? Because in the past, it hasn't happened.
So, also, I just want to add on. Question is also, how do you define misinformation, right? At the peak of the COVID waves, if you doubted the vaccine, you were cornered and you were called out. Today, there's increasing evidence that some of these vaccines may have problems. I'm not an arbiter of whether it has a problem or not, but there is now more evidence saying that there are problems with these vaccines. Some people are getting heart attacks. So again, not enough science to back it, right? In 2021, if I tweeted that, and Facebook would give, YouTube or Twitter, whoever would give some warning, right? Oh, this is, this may be misinformation.
Go here to get that.
Right?
Yeah.
At one time, there was a question about whether the garden was renamed in Delhi. The government said it was not renamed, it was fake. 2 years later, the garden was renamed. Now is it fake news? That same post aged well, right? So, how do you even decide what is fake news? What if that fake news actually then becomes actually true? What if Kate Middleton is really mistaken? Right now, it may be misinformation. Right now, maybe it's many things. In a month from now, it may actually turn out to be true. So, and has the fact checker actually gone and verified? A lot of what is going on about, say, the Princess of Wales, some fact checker may say it's not true. At some point, it may turn out to be true. You can't bash the platform for that, right? And how can a platform even take this content down? And it's not lawfully nothing wrong with it. It's my view that the vaccine doesn't work. There's a law that says I have to believe the vaccine works. No. Why should the platform take it? Why should the platform even tag it as say false information? Does the platform know something I don't tell us? So even that concept of saying the platform should do this or should do that doesn't work, right? I think the only way really again is get people to, I mean, today people are smarter about some of these tonics, etc., right? Because in the peak of COVID again, a lot of misinformation about snorting mustard oil or this oil or applying something, etc. Now people are much smarter. Now you say put mustard oil for your hair growth, people will say, sorry, I googled it and it's not true.
But I mean, let's talk about awareness as a thing, right? I mean, if you are trying to avoid a scam, for instance, awareness instantly makes you completely invulnerable to that particular scam. If you say that, okay, don't just GPay people that randomly text you or randomly call you that you don't know, that's great. That person will never be a target of that kind of attack ever again, right? Does that work similarly in terms of media literacy? Do you feel like there are still very obvious holes that we would plug and instantly solve problems?
I think as people age on the internet, many of these problems will go away, right? I mean, even misinformation in 2018, 2017 was such a big issue because Jio had just launched its internet services. Most people on the internet were just maybe not even a year old or eight. So they were falling for anything that they saw on a phone. Today, people don't fall for things that easy. Now you have to have a little more, even your scams are a little more complex. So you'll have a call center calling you, you will think that, oh, there's a ringtone. It's not some random guy saying, sir, I'm calling from DHL. Now it's a little more complex of, where the number is, etc. So you will have, as people age on the internet, awareness will grow. Government should go a lot more awareness building about, don't fall for these things. Simply saying, hey, the political party should come up with some rules is not going to happen. Because the political party will have rules. What about third parties? And at the same time, you can't just say, oh, platform should do something. What do platforms? If I start taking on everything, then you'll say you'll try censorship, then it'll become China. Because we don't want either of the two.
No, I totally agree with that point. And I think, on the awareness part, I just might come in. There is also a need for people to be aware of what is the real societal harm that can happen from spreading misinformation, fake news. And there is a lot of research to back that. People tend to share fake news because it's controversial, it's spicy, it's like, okay, something happened in a society, who's dating whom or whatever. Like people like gossip in general. I don't, but a lot of people do. So the problem is that you have to tell them the linkages, like somebody spoke about WhatsApp forward led to lynching. Right? So there was a very clear chain which could sort of establish that, okay, you spread fake news, people assemble in a group, beat up somebody, then lynch somebody. So that level of awareness has to happen. I'm sure it's happening. Government is doing it, platforms are also doing it, but I think we need to put more and more emphasis on explaining them, building these ideas. And we need to sort of have awareness for different groups, for children, for women, for elderly people, because of different kind of groups, different communities, we have to sort of enable them. I think one more thing with respect to takedown is the ability of platforms themselves to understand the contextual realities. And this is something which we've also been seeing. And the fact is that even I mean, India is a very diverse country. I can assure you that if you move from district to district, sensitivities change and evolve, right? And there are villages where being a vegetarian is very, very like holy and it's kosher, and there are villages where non-veg is accepted as a very normal thing. Food habits, cultural habits, religious habits, of course, they take a lot of importance with respect to how people associate with information. And I think that is something which we need more emphasis on in the long run with respect to being able to determine, okay, this is a geography where X amount of content is very sensitive. So how do we tailor our AI tools to be able to sort of take down a flag or whatever we need to do? I think would love to see what is happening there. And I'm sure there are initiatives. But again, 460 odd million people on the internet. It's huge in terms of the scale we are talking about. So it's not a problem that has to be solved immediately, or whether it can be solved also, because misinformation has been around for decades. I mean, previous to the internet era, people would spread pamphlets, right? I mean, political misinformation is the name of the game. That's how politics happens in India since independence. If you see political parties, their whole idea is to delegitimize their opposition. The only way you can do is through spreading either information, because they could be spreading misinformation, or misinformation about them. So it's up to the voter at the end of the day to be mature and agile. And it's been going on because we are all on the internet. We see it happening. So we are sort of worried more now, but I mean, it's been around since 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So the spread of propaganda, the spread of misinformation is not a problem which we have to solve today. We have to be aware of the problem in the context of India and understand, okay, how do we mitigate some of the really bad actors and sort of sort it out on the ground and have greater emphasis on content moderation, which is more contextual. You do these things, I think you can move in a direction where, okay, we can arrive somewhere. Heavy-handed regulation, I want to see research which says that, okay, by bringing in X amount of regulation, internet became X amount safer. I don't think that has happened. And again, when it comes to safe harbor, why emphasize on safe harbor? Because I think that's probably the concern of an open internet right now. And do we have enough evidence to say, okay, we take away your safe harbor, internet will become safe? So the WhatsApp problem that people spoke about previously, and that's a dual-edged sword, right? I mean, it gives you into an encryption, gives you privacy, but when the whole underground false information market is huge over there. Of course, that nobody denies that. But I honestly, we need discussions like these to figure out what are the solutions. What is it that we can do together to make it better?
Absolutely. And Amitabh, what has worked historically in terms of getting harmful disinformation off platforms, or at least to disrupt them enough that they don't lead to episodes of violence, like with WhatsApp and with chains?
With WhatsApp, what has worked? Okay.
Not with WhatsApp. I'm giving WhatsApp as an example.
Yeah.
Saying what kind of interventions have kind of been able to.
Why do you assume that WhatsApp led to lynching?
So
Like,
yeah,
this is like that story that came in BuzzFeed or something, right?
Yeah.
It was a false story. It's like saying, I mean, did WhatsApp kill those people? I don't.
Yeah, no, WhatsApp did not kill those people, and WhatsApp can't do anything.
And how do you know the content of WhatsApp? That also is not true. It makes for a great story, and journalists write to that. I mean, the fact that media organizations themselves have fact checkers to themselves fact their own news tells you how bad the news media is doing. And then we blame the platforms. I think it's unfair to say WhatsApp and name a platform and say that led to lynching. That is I mean, since there is no one else from the tech space on this panel, I would say that that's patently misinformation that the platform led to that. People believe what they want to believe, right? And it's not necessarily true that that came on the platform. Person on the earlier panel was talking about how this actually came. People were just hearing it in general. So I don't think it's fair to link it to a platform.
Sure. I mean, definitely putting one platform to blame might be complex and there's little data to support that. Putting all the platforms to blame, yes, clearly. Like if you take somebody, Professor said it right now that, you hit somebody 8 times, they'll buy your stuff. It's there in marketing, pretty much similar in our space as well. They'll start believing it. And it's just like saying, this room has no roof. And then I start talking about a room without a roof. And everybody starts arguing something different. So, but the question about what has worked. I think where things work very well is when a major takedown happens, there's a lot of awareness about it, there's a lot of conversation about it, the envelope is pushed forward. But again, industrial problem, artisanal methods like 100 takedowns, let's say everybody put together did 5,000 reports of fact checking. That was created what, in a minute and a half right now? So the immense large sea of problems that we are working on, very, very few methodologies are working from the content moderation side. Other methodologies are definitely working. While laws are a problem, but when Europe goes hard on somebody and there's a 10 million euro fine, it does send out reports. Suddenly phones start ringing and people are like, okay, what can we do about it? So on the platform side, see, we need to realize content, the piece of content itself is monetizable. It's data, it is engagement. Like he said, people like to talk about it. If coming up a dog would have bit me, I would have told everybody. But all the dogs who did not bite me, I did not talk to them. So that part cannot be forgotten. What we need to think about systemically is what is the intent? Why should a platform? What is it that we are pushing? What are they that they are gaining? What are the users gaining? That they can bring better systems in place. Currently, the systems that are there are just about okay. And if I can be a little critical here, they are merely a formality. There needs to be a lot more done. And this is not just me saying it. Multiple people who have left big tech are openly saying that content moderation or trust and safety, after the first layer, which is amazing and really, really good people are doing it. Trust me, even in India, the people who do trust and safety are amazing. After that, the problem begins. And we need to address that problem.
And when you say after that, what exactly do you mean by?
So what is the way? How quickly can you? Let's talk about TikTok because it's banned in India, and hopefully no, I can't talk about TikTok. But let's talk about any platform. How quick it is to upload something up there? 2 to 3 clicks, right? Try reporting that same thing. 7 to 8 clicks. Also, somewhere down the line, the terminology will get so difficult that if I test you on 3 terms, I'm sure 50% of this room will fail. That is by design. That's not just done. There are geniuses sitting and creating it, where upload is on a click, removal. So that's the first time. 7 places I have to go to report. After I report, it reaches somewhere in a very complex system. There's hashing in it. Then post sorting. People will talk about artificial intelligence, and I would like to quote Rand Morimoto's Scary AI's podcast of today, where he's openly saying it is neither artificial nor intelligence, it's just sorting, which is happening right now. Although there is hope. AI could be a big, big hope in the future. But currently, when it reaches that level, and try doing it with 10 posts, we do it regularly. 90% of the times, forget misinformation, it's very difficult to define. CSAM, open CSAM, CSEA, alcohol sales, drug abuse, weapon sales, drug abuse, all illegal stuff in India. It will come back as this is not against the community guidelines. It's not that the community guidelines were wrong or the terms of service was wrong. It was the last part where somebody looked at it, did not have enough time, thought, okay, did not put it in the context and said, no, this is cool, let it go back. You have to report it again. So that last part is what I'm talking about, which is actually content moderation. Terms of service and community guidelines is not content moderation. It's when the process begins.
Absolutely. You mean the human intervention?
The human intervention and the process leading to the human intervention. So after you've reported something, the pipeline it goes through, the sorting that happens, the hashing that happens, the pixelation that happens. When it finally reaches a content moderator who has less than 20 seconds to say yes or no at an end of an 8-hour shift, could make a mistake, and many of them do make mistakes, and multiple.
Is that the main problem in your experience? Because we also hear often that, oh, India has so many languages, there is not enough language resources.
Yeah, somebody was talking about it in our break.
Yeah.
Where are the clean data sets?
Yeah.
If you really want to train that AI, in English you'll get them for multiple topics. Will we get them in Bhojpuri for multiple topics? there is no word for privacy. There is a lot of contextualization in tech that you would have to do to actually build solutions for us Indians using it. So, and that is happening very, very little, right? I mean, I come from the trust and safety startup world, $24 billion, very, very small industry. You go to buy, talk to all the big people, they'll say, no, nobody's buying this, right? So there is very little money because there is very little intent and there's very little motivation. So that problem is definitely there.
Berges, do you have anything to add? Or?
I mean, I think the solution to that is the IT. And more, to be fair, some of the IT rule requirements on companies is a good thing. It's post 2018, if the government is putting more requirements, more due diligence to be done, it is only ensuring that then this happens. The lack of due diligence. I mean, today, for instance, with most platforms, Indian or otherwise, if you want to reach out to the company, how do you do it? At least now you have a face here to arrest. That fear of arrest will never happen, but at least the fear of that puts some pressure, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but government, I mean, saying that the government should create a body, etc., maybe too much. But putting in regulations saying that if you don't do this, you don't get the intermediate benefits is a helpful start. Because otherwise there has to be an intention, right?
I mean, but has it kind of translated into a solid disincentive in your experience? Because all the big tech platforms that are complying with this requirement, they are anyway spending an enormous amount of money in legal expenses in various high courts. So does this actually translate into them saying, okay, now we will invest more and make sure that we are more proactive?
Going to court is cheaper than action. Right? Or you disagree?
I totally agree with you.
How much would you spend in court? $5 million? How much is, you said they're spending a lot in court. How much is a lot?
No, as in, that's the thing is they have representation in all these venues where this might come back to bite them.
And
right?
you said a lot. How much is that lot? $10 million?
Very always speaks. It's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
So, but if you had to do everything that he's saying they should, how much would that cost?
Yeah. So, to my question to that was essentially, is there a different way of doing this? And that's why Kazim you mentioned like a co-regulation model. Can you kind of flesh that out and?
I think it's the government needs to do it. The minute you start doing self-regulation, I mean, let's talk about the election. Right? You have an election this self-regulation piece. This is only 6 companies, right? It doesn't even involve all the tech companies. How many companies are going to do advertisements on the internet today? Is it 6 companies only? No. Right? There are many advertising agencies. There are many online networks, ad networks. The ECIS piece only covers 6 companies. It's broken starting there, right? This very idea of self-regulation is a terrible idea. Either you regulate or you say let the market regulate. But this idea of saying self-regulation, oh, we won't step in, is an absolutely terrible idea because self-regulation is never going to be in the interest of what the regulation should be, right? Self-regulation is only saying, hey, you don't do it, we will try to do as little as required to keep you happy. That is not going to work. Why would we just come out with a regulation and say, hey, listen, any company running ads during the election requires to go A, B, C, D. Why is it only 6 companies who stupidly signed up to that have to do it? Self-regulation is the worst idea.
No, so self-regulation and co-regulation are different things actually. And in co-regulation, you have to have the government. I mean, you're not keeping the government outside the scope of regulation. Self-regulation, yes, usually you create an industry body or whatever, and then you sort of come up with your own code of conduct. But co-regulation is where you have the government, but you don't have a top-down approach. You have the regulator, you have the ministry involved, bring in the industry as well, and create certain mechanisms which are then regulated and which are the companies are held accountable. And you have to have the government as part. You cannot exclude the government from regulation. So I think the whole SRO idea, I mean, it's worked in some cases, but it's not worked in some cases as well. But I haven't seen any co-regulation model yet when it comes to content. So I think that's something which we can test, because clearly, I mean, when you talk about strong due diligence norms, I don't know how much of that is working out right now. So there is merit to try something else while keeping the sanctity of, okay, these are the norms you have to follow. Because I do feel that code of conducts, while they can work, they need to be sort of backed by some legitimacy as well.
I'll jump in here with a cool analogy. This is totally getting into now my startup world is basically seat belts, right? 1960 comes in US, people burn the cars, cut it down. 1970, Australia, Victoria, the law comes in. 2023, Mahindra and Tata are fighting in India, which is the safest car. So look at that, right? The second you set the standard, you make it a law. It takes a lot of time to implement. And it will not be perfect, it will not be good, it won't be great in the beginning, it will become better over a period of time. But the intent, why should I do it as a business? That should become clear. And the basic standards, I think how good we can be is, can you become a Volvo is a different question. But the basics, have a seatbelt, have an airbag, I think that everybody can agree upon. It will take time, it will take multiple consultations because everybody is also 2 billion people in India. But I think the lowest standards can be agreed upon and then we can go above that. And there is an ask for it. It's like people are, safety by design has come out of Australia. The same hearings are happening in the United States. DSA has created a great playbook. Like Trivio is a company which is multi-billion dollars now. Another company called Yoti, the second age assurance came in. That same startup, which did not have 5,000 pounds in their account, is in a couple of $1 billion evaluation because these laws also create an industry and then the solutions come. So that is something to be thought about over here, where how do you create a law where the business can prosper? Do you need a law? Is something which I think is quite clear to understand.
I think with privacy as well, we've seen that become a competitive advantage now. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that wasn't the case. Now you have Apple advertising that, hey, privacy first. So
I just think poor BlackBerry is just like way ahead of their
So we'll have some parting remarks, and then because we are kind of running out of time, and then we'll open up to the audience. Do you want to start?
I think content moderation, the next phase has arrived because of AI. We are talking about LLMs. The next phase is going to be AI agents, which can do a lot more. We still have a big problem in misinformation about definition and systems in India. So we need to solve that. And collaboration and working together. I think this creating villains out of whoever, civil society, government, tech, consultant, lawyer, that is a really stupid methodology, but we like that a lot, just to kind of do that. So I think, yeah, working together, post these conversations, more action. And I mean, we are in the thick of it. The professor said something like, we shouldn't be too deep. I think we are pretty deep. When World Economic Forum says that this is the top biggest threat to India, we should focus our energies on, trying to solve it.
Berges?
I think while regulation is important and regulation is needed, the next blocker will be that as Apar Gupta's article said 2 weeks back, we'll be playing to deity and they won't take our feedback. So the problem is either you push for regulation, but then it's terrible regulation, which is unimplementable, like our privacy law, which does not have the word privacy in it. Please check data protection. And then you have this, you're constantly dealing with that, and the actual spirit of why you needed this regulation is not met. Self-regulation would entail platforms like us or many others doing the very bare minimum and saying, hey, look, we're doing something, right? 2019, platforms did this with Election Commission of India. Today, it's business as usual, nobody's concerned. This is the only event I've actually attended this time. 5 years back, there were 15. There were TV debates, there were events. IIC was a frequent point discussing this topic. We did a self-regulation piece. Today we are all. So regulation is good, but and I think the other piece that the government should probably look at is, as part of this new education policy, whatever, students learn in schools, in colleges about how to use the internet, what are the ill effects of the internet, how you can get cancer, how you have to be careful of what you say, privacy matters, etc. Because unless that happens, I mean, as long as the word privacy doesn't have a context context. Right? Students across India never going to learn why we need kids. And then you will always get away by saying, "Arey, if you are running to height, then why do you need you?" Right? It's the same logic.
Kazim?
Pretty much sums everything up, but regulation which is proportionate, content moderation more contextual, and sandboxing different models of coding.
So anyone, yeah, I just.
Yeah, so I had many questions, but I'll ask only one. So it's one thing to not be able to decide whether a piece of content is problematic enough to be taken down, but it's another thing to boost that into everybody's newsfeed because your recommendation algorithm found it to be very engaging. And there are numerous studies and investigative reports that have found these recommendation algorithms being responsible for the massive spread of disinformation content, health related disinformation during COVID. So while I understand that these black box algorithms cannot be open source because it will affect the market value of the company, etc. But can't there be audits to ensure that such algorithms are not actually doing the harm that we know it does? Or is that even possible? Looking beyond content moderation, is that possible to work towards?
I'll echo that, and since we're discussing misinformation, every time we talk about platforms, somehow the conversation goes, these are really democratic, neutral places where if I put a post and if you put a post and if you put a post, it'll act equally. I mean, guys, these are private businesses, right? And they do decide in their favor what to show, what not to show. And if anybody wants to experiment, put a picture of rock on your any of your feed, put 10,000 rupees behind it, see how popular it gets. Right, so echoing that, and platforms are black boxes for people outside. Internally, it's very well known. It's a science that which post goes where. And good example, try a free Tibet post on some of the platforms and see where it goes.
The one you didn't want to mention.
What?
The one you didn't want to mention, TikTok.
I'm not mentioning any platform. Too many NDAs, too many others. But basically saying it's not a black box. It's not completely democratic and neutral. And there are better ways of doing it. Of course, that is done by money. The boosting of a post means somebody is paid somewhere. I'll give a very different example of the movie called Animal. Many people must have seen it. $1 million invested on their music before the movie came out. It was bound to be a hit. It's already gone down to a science. So it's not really a black box, maybe to us. But yeah, solutions platform is illegal.
No, but is it illegal? Is the content illegal? You are talking about health content, right? COVID. At that time, what was said to be a vaccine was the best thing mankind ever created. Is today being questioned that many people are dying because they took the vaccine.
Take example, this is the piece of information that consuming a lot of alcohol would rid you of COVID, which led to death of more than 700 people in Iran. So just those kind of.
I didn't know alcohol was available in Iran.
False course. Well, that's the thing. There's no alcohol available, so people started drinking, ethanol, methanol, and other kind of alcoholic drinks.
So wait 1 minute. Did they die of alcohol or methanol?
Alcoholic poisoning, but they don't have controlled liquor, right? So it's like basically.
So we don't know if someone drank only alcohol, they'd survive. We don't know that either, right? No fact checker check that.
We do know that people watch these posts. They thought that actually consuming alcohol would rid them of COVID, and they consume whatever alcohol that could be lighter fuel or anything else. So that led to these deaths because these rumors were plenty at the time. So the problem is these kind of problematic posts, false cures, etc. In case of health misinformation and political misinformation. I mean, is there a way to stop them being boosted so much?
I don't think it gets, when you say boosted, are you meaning by paid boosting or you meaning just because people are engaging with that content is getting more viral?
Both, second one especially, because if and say a recommendation algorithm finds this kind of content which contains a bit of hate speech, some dog whistling, it finds that okay, a lot of people will engage with it. It's so polarizing, it's such a hot topic. But spreading that could actually lead to real life consequences, real life violence. But it still boosts these kind of posts,
Yeah, but how if it's not unlawful? How
it
can
is unlawful to spread hate speech, but it still gets spread.
No. Is it dog whistling? It depends, right? It can't be everything in one video. If it's dog whistling, it's one thing. It's not illegal necessarily. Hate speech, yes, but then in hate speech's case, if someone reported it and it's truly hate speech, it would anyways get taken down. I don't know of any platform that allows for hate speech on its platform, at least among the significant social media entities. There may be 4chans, etc. If it is actually hate speech, why would it get boosted? It will get taken down if someone reports it. But if it is something that is problematic, I agree, it may be problematic, maybe dog whistling, maybe some level of misinformation or whatever else. If it is not illegal, people are engaging with it. Why should the platform come in and not allow people to view it? Because if I start doing that, that's A-grade censorship. Because you think today that this content is bad. I may not believe so, right? There are people who believe that, who maybe not believe, who agree with that view. There are people who agree with that view. Now, whose view is the standard view, right? Today it may be this government, tomorrow it may be another government. The content may be this way or the other way. Who is to say that the view should be demolished and you should take this content down simply because there are some people who feel that this is dog whistling? It's not illegal.
See, censorship would be taking it down, and I understand it's problematic. But it's another thing to make sure this goes into everybody's feed, because you think they are likely to engage with it.
But see, again,
engagement revenue, I get it, brings in more eyeballs.
No,
more
but you have to also understand, it's not like someone is sitting there and saying, oh, this piece of content I'm going to boost. No.
Yeah.
The algorithm is blind to that.
No, but I think Archie's question was, if you have something that encourages dangerous behavior, like please drink methanol and it will cure you, how do we stop that?
So the basic question was, should these algorithms be audited? And would social media companies would be open for these algorithms being audited, just to ensure that at least it is not doing some harm and there are some people to oversee this whole process?
I mean, how would that help? Because again, I'm saying, if the content is not illegal, the algorithm is blind to it. The algorithm only knows this content getting number of views from XYZ. If it's getting this, it should now be shown to X, ABC, right? Either the content is bad, it's illegal content, in which case it should get taken down, or the content is okay. If the content is okay, it may not be suitable to, it may have dog whistling, it may have somebody saying something partially untrue, whatever. It's not illegal. As long as it's not illegal, that algorithm is going to work the same way for this content or a dog video that everybody is engaging with, or a video where 3 of us are saying something very interesting that suddenly goes viral on the internet. The algorithm can't figure that out, right? It's not like he said, that AI algorithm is a sorting tool. If it is sorting, it's saying, hey, this is doing well, let's show it to more people. Now, either that content is illegal, in which case the platform should either take it down, or it's kosher. Now, you may not find it kosher, and that's okay. But that's a you problem, not a platform problem, not an algorithm problem.
Okay.
Yeah, Rahul.
I'm Rahul. My interests lie in the intersection of technology, democracy, and foreign affairs. That helps me zoom out a little bit from this problem. My career started at Google, so I have first-hand perspective on how platforms have worked, have not worked. I also spent many years in Myanmar during the Rohingya crisis. I've seen Facebook, mess being created right in front of me. In fact, I was working on a hate speech monitoring platform even at the time. So, with that perspective in mind and today's India in mind, I'm not sure if anyone from the government is in the room right now, but I'll go ahead and raise the point anyway. What kind of an order are we working towards is something that bothers me, right? And I want to pose this question to the panel from the platform interest in mind. It sort of leads to the next panel because we're talking about India's sovereignty, right? I want to quickly compare it with an example. G20 was a platform, right? On the one hand, we want to be a part of an international system and we want engagement both ways. But the moment the German or the US government raises a question on Arvind Kejriwal's arrest, we say, this is blatant interference, right? So how do you expect international platforms who are currently, let's say, the canvas for the debates we're having, to take that step? So there's the safe harbor conversation that happens, but beyond that, what is the incentive for them? Because if they step in, then we'll raise sovereignty issue, right? Or ethics, or if they don't step in, we're raising ethics issue. So with a lot of the legal community here, I'm also very keen to understand that, in that space of international canvas and ethics, how do we deal with these problems? Is it an advocacy issue? Is it influence? Should we continue to engage and build influence from outside in, so that whatever system and government comes in place, they don't forget that they're a part of a bigger picture, right? Because otherwise, today's government may not be incentivized to do anything on the problems we're discussing, if I may say so, right? I'm putting my neck out there and say, but if you're expecting them to change laws that favor these issues, maybe they won't, because ethically they may not be aligned with what I perceive as right. So then where do the platforms stand in that case?
Kazim?
On the issue of ethics versus the national picture, right?
Just look at Indian foreign policy. I think so. When we talk about content moderation and takedown, just in terms of Indian reliability or safe harbor, these are all issues which are constitutional in nature. So there is a constitution. We have freedom of speech, of expression, and expression with reasonable restrictions. So of course, Indian government's job is to protect the constitution, right? So the government will not and should not be worried about outside influence into India, which I don't think makes sense for the government to say, okay, because the Western powers are saying so, let's do that. I don't think that's a right approach of dealing with it. Global governance is a different issue altogether. I don't think this government or any other government politically should get influenced by global government, sort of just Western powers in terms of specific Western powers, what we're talking about. They should be part of global governance initiatives. They should be part of influencing progressive policies. But whatever is happening domestically in India is focused for Indian government. I don't think any foreign government has a right or the need to comment or go about saying if what you're doing domestically is correct or not. I think the buck stops, and that's where the sovereignty issue is.
And I'm relating that to platforms too, right? Because we're talking about international platforms. They're
Yeah,
not necessarily Indian platforms that are
and
big
so
India out. They're kind of West in.
they are, and I think when we talk about international platforms or tech companies from abroad working in India, it's very clear that they have to comply with the law, right? So while it's their job to comply, it's the civil society's job or the lawyer or the consultant to say, okay, whether the laws are appropriate or not. That's a different debate.
That's the ethics on.
Yes, but the companies cannot ignore and say, okay, we will not comply. You can challenge it in the courts. If you get the orders in your favor, great. But if you're doing business in India, you have to comply. Now it's a separate conversation whether those laws are progressive or they need to be improved or what they need to do. But these two things are separate altogether, as well as India's influence, and I think that's a very separate point of discussion.
I think civil society is sort of the answer to building influence to address some of these issues, because let's say the government is not incentivized and the platforms are not incentivized either. Then you're in a kind of deadlock, right? If the government says, well, this suits us, the platform says, well, the law doesn't allow us to carry it. So then
Yeah,
it's going to fix the problem, and that's why we're kind of where we are.
I think I would like to add, because you come from Google, right? Something which was really pushed back in 2010 was global standards, right? They are completely out of the window. Copyright works very differently. All these problems, try uploading a song which is copyrighted, done, not working. Geo-locking works really nice. So something which platforms are also moving towards, and Europe has pushed for a GDPR, is you agree to the laws, which they do when they incorporate a company. When it comes to terms and service, community guidelines, there's still a lot of room for improvement. Simple. How is a 13-year-old signing a contract in India under which law? Very simple, right? COPA is what do we do with COPA? It's not in our constitution. So there is a lot of improvement that can happen over there. What the countries think about, if big people are in the room, they can give their inputs much better. But what I can talk about is like really like a technician, that there is a lot of room for improvement over there. And yes, civil society has been that translator, where many times government says, how can this happen? And they were like, well, this happens because of this. And you bring people to the table. So that conversation, civil society has to do it. Are they doing a great job? They can be, civil society has to improve a lot to kind of get that conversation going.
Like that whole lobbying space in the US has become good and bad, right?
Yeah,
To get things fixed.
totally.
Do you think there is a lobby?
Rahul, I'm sorry, I'm going to now. Anyone else have one last question? Yeah. Can you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, I'm Abhishek from JET. So I'd like to initiate a conversation on the business model of the social media platforms. So I hear a lot of conversation here about trust and safety and regulation, various models and stuff. But I assume there is I mean, people take it for given that the underlying logic of the social media platform is to go monetize the users' data, their user behavior on our platforms, and then you build totally new ecosystems on them. Whether it can be AI, it can be a trust and safety ecosystem and stuff like that. So I would like, it's an open question to all the panelists, anyone can answer. Can we think a bit differently about this kind of business model which monetizes users' data? I mean, at the end of the day, these are all business entities that at some particular stage came with the idea that, oh, see, there is so much residual data, so we can make use of it, we can monetize it. So it's a historical contingency that at some historical point, at some historical stage, business minds and techies, they make a decision which led to a particular ecosystem which is built on monetizing users' data. So can we think beyond this paradigm of monetizing users' data that can help us build more healthy content moderation regimes?
So like a social media platform, but made by socialists.
No, not nothing like that.
I have a patenting question to that. Sorry.
Just let me give a clarification. It's not about socialists.
No, how will you make money, boss? We sell ads. Like Mark Zuckerberg once famously said, Senator, we sell ads.
Definitely, you sell ads. But the point is, the underlying business logic. Is there only one logic, or can there be alternatives? That's my point.
In theory, there can be. Currently, monetization of data is the way to go. There are multiple conversations about what the other models can be. And the second one of them succeeds, like Facebook did, multiple people will start running after it. So it's like changing the fuel from oil to solar to wind to something like that. So the business part of all of this is the core part of it. It is the soul of it. The second you change that soul, other people will pick it up, and it can be done. I just don't know.
But
Or
many
many
people
people
do. But the thing is, it won't happen at scale, right? Twitter is trying it, right? Membership. Everybody pays 1,000 rupees. You want a free service. Are you willing to pay 1,000 rupees for using a social media ad? I'm sure the answer is no. If the answer is no, I have to show you ads. I have to use your data. How many people are willing to pay 1,000 rupees a month to use Instagram? The minute I say pay 1,000, actually more than 1,000, pay $15. So pay 1,500. Nobody's gonna pay 1,500 rupees. But as long as it's free, you'll open it 50 times a day. And when you open it 50 times a day, I have to monetize, right? I have servers to pay for, employees to run the system. All of that works out. Marketing, this, that, and the other. Lawyers to stay in court. Maybe digital public. Digital.
That's absolutely fine.
Sorry, I have to cut you off now. We are running very, very late.
Absolutely.
we continue the conversation once.
Yeah.
We'll take this
We are
offline.
even- Yeah. So
But
thank you
yeah,
all
it's a
for
good
coming. Can we take a picture?
Yeah.
So.